Just want to add something to that whole silkwood tree back there. It's a tree, and there's different ways of trees working. There's this video I did on the RK selection thing, and it was talking about how human beings are K selected, and a small little just overview of RK selection is a whole thing. It's a reproductive theory to say that R is quantity, as I say. For me, I say R is quantity, K is quality. So an R species would be like rabbits, who reproduce a lot, don't invest that much time into their young. And the K species would be like wolves, which normally mate with one, and then they have one cub or a few cubs and invest a lot of energy into raising the kids. And the mate selection and all these things kind of go into it. And one thing I was thinking with the RK selection, people say, okay, no, human beings are K selected. So there's no way this RK actually applies to humans. And I think not necessarily, because if you compare to trees, then of course, or to other life forms, then yes, human beings are K selected. But one thing I was saying is, like, with human beings, we also have the ability to eat. We're omnivores when it comes to the food that we eat, but then we have the ability to be vegan. And just like with trees in general, the way they reproduce is by creating seeds. Now, different trees have different practices. For example, I showed you that silkwood tree back there. That one has the practice of creating these little fruits. The fruits aren't eaten by animals, but instead they open up and then the seeds go around. Some trees will have a reproductive strategy where it's like, okay, our fruit is eaten by animals, it's either picked by humans or other types of animals, that then reproduces and spreads apart our seed. So those two trees still have the same general seed kind of reproduction thing, but how it is in practice is different. And that's how it is, I think, with humans, how it's like, yes, you can have RK selection on the spectrum of humans, even though it's all reproductive strategy in general is K. If that makes any sense. Now back to the conversation I was having about selection and people's choices. Walking around here and the sidewalk situation, I've always been talking about how the sidewalks are pretty garbage. But I was hearing a story from someone who was telling me that people actually didn't used to walk that much in Nairobi, since public transport was relatively cheap. As I said, with some of the matatus, they were called matatus, because they used to cost 3 shillings, which is manageable for most people. And even now, if you're not traveling through, at rush hour, you can get it as low as 10 shillings, even to go from Westlands or from this area all the way to town, which is a pretty far distance. But there was a strike with the matatus, and then people decided to start walking because people didn't have the option of using the easier way to get around. And then once they started walking, maybe they saw some health benefits, even saving that little money that they were saving on it, they decided to stay and do that. And I think that also now has increased the need for sidewalks that weren't really considered before. And also because urban sprawl wasn't there, so there was a lot of spaces between different living areas. So another thing I've added to see on that is, in certain areas, since people didn't walk as much as I thought they did, I also wonder, why didn't people work out that much? People walk and they stay in decent shape, they eat a different kind of diet. Obesity isn't too much of an issue here, but neither are very strong, muscular people. But in a neighborhood like this, you'll see people jogging, you'll see people riding bikes. In certain areas, people have actually started to exercise more just for recreational and not just riding the bike to get to places. So that's something you're starting to see increasing here in Nairobi. And I think it's going to be pretty big too, because think about the people who may not be strong enough to get on a marathon team, but definitely would be strong enough if you put a bike under them. That same ability to run marathons, to run long distances, could probably transfer into cycling pretty well with some decent training. So that's it for this video. That was just a short addition to the previous video I did on RK selection, kind of talking about how they can be RK within a K species, or they can be RK also within R species. There's probably some rabbits that are somewhat more K than most of the other rabbits out there. So Let me know what you guys think about that. If you've heard of RK theory selection before, I think it was replaced by something else, something like life history or something. I'm not quite sure what the other evolutionary theory with it is, but as I said, with RK, this is about reproduction, and I am under the belief that pretty much everything we do is somehow tied into our need to reproduce as living beings, living creatures. And if you kind of take that out, you take the considerations out of reproductive fitness and what people do, then you kind of can get lost in the woods and kind of not understand what's going on. But whether it's RK selection theory or some other theory, I think if you discount reproduction, you're missing essentially the main part of why we are alive, because somebody reproduced us, and our body has the genes, has the drive to continue life and to reproduce itself and other cells. If you think that's wrong, let me know if you're found examples of against that, or I don't know. Well, that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.